biggest specialty, I guess, is world building. It's something that I'm known for. You know, I've been working on fantasy books for pretty much my entire editing career. That's that's where I like to read, and B, like the types of books that I've been working on for a long time. And, you know, if you know anything about me as an editor, you know that I tend towards those really epic, like, crazy fantasy series that, you know, like really dig into intense world building and lots of like big casts of characters and all of that. Like Game of Thrones.
What are 3 favorites?
Huh?
What are 3 favorites? Just to give us an idea. What that you've worked on, or that you've just enjoyed reading? Either one.
So I really, you know, absolutely, totally love the Throne of Glass series by Sarah Maas. I would have loved to be Sarah's editor on those books. I think that the intricacy of, you know, her world building is really fantastic, in the way that she seeded some things in earlier books that eventually came full circle in the later books in the series was really fascinating to watch and really well done. And one of my earliest acquisitions for Harlequin was The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest, which, of course, you know, did have its share of a little bit of controversy and all of that. But Laurie's world building is just this phenomenal, amazing depth in terms of, you know, the richness of it. You know, she has so many different types of characters, the different magic systems, and everything is just like contained right up here in her head. Like if you ask her a question, she knows the answer, and it's just incredible to watch. Of course, you know, like I worked on Amanda Foodie's Shadow Game. Sorry, I'm looking at my bookshelf. Amanda Foodie's Shadow Game series I really enjoyed working on as well. That was another one of my early acquisitions for Harlequin. And just, you know, some things that I've read recently, I really liked. Sorry, looking again at the shelf. Christelle DeBoss, A Winter's Promise. That series was just like really gorgeously written and wrought, and I love the world building in those books as well. The Graceling series, of course. Sorry, again, looking at my list of books. And Tamora Pierce is a longtime favorite. She is, you know, the queen of fantasy. She's the one who really got me started with reading and enjoying fantasy. The Alana, you know, the Song of the Lioness Quartet, of course. Like those were the books that really got me reading fantasy novels first. So.
You mentioned earlier when you're doing a proofread copy edit that you'll find if a character's got one color coat in one scene and then it's another coat 20 pages later. I imagine that's a problem. It's just magnitude times a bajillion when you're dealing with intense world building and fantasies. How do you keep track of that stuff? Because I'm the author and I can't keep track of that stuff in my own book. So when you come in and edit, how do you keep track of it all?
I mean, a lot of it, you know, like at least for the authors that I worked with when I worked in house, like I was in with them on those series from the ground up, you know, like starting off. So I, you know, wouldn't say that I knew their world building as intricately as they knew it, of course. But, you know, you read a book so many times that, you know, you learn to sort of keep track of these sorts of things. But in terms of, you know, just in general, and especially working with the freelance authors that I work with, something that I encourage fantasy authors to do is to create what's called a world building Bible. And so that is basically, you know, like before you even really start writing the book, or even if you've gotten partway through it, like I think it's really advisable to kind of just stop and create your guidebook essentially to this world. All of the things that, you know, a reader should know about your world, you know, like what kind of money do they use there? You know, how does the magic system work if there is any magic, like, or is there some kind of advanced tech that needs to be kind of explained and seeded through? You know, what are your characters, what languages do they speak? How are their dialects different, you know, from place to place? You know, what roles do the different types of people play within society? Like what are, like, I guess the caste, the social, you know, like structures within the world? How does the government work? You know, like all of these things, I think, you know, it really behooves fantasy authors to kind of figure them out from the get-go and really fully imagine their world as much as possible before they start writing it. And of course, there's always going to be things that kind of crop up throughout the book as you're writing it, where you're kind of like, oh, I'm not really sure. I didn't really think about what I wanted to do here. But then, you know, hopefully there's fewer of those moments if you've taken the time to create your world building Bible. And that's something that I also, like, again, a service I provide is consultations on those world building Bibles and helping them to develop them and really brainstorm and flesh those worlds out before they start writing.
How long should a good world Bible be?
I think it really depends on how complex and intricate your world is. Like, I mean, I'm sure it can be anywhere from just a few pages long if your world building isn't, you know, incredibly intricate to, gosh, maybe 50 pages. So it really depends, again, on how complex your world is, whether you're writing more than one book in the series, etc.
I know, just kind of fun, off topic a little bit. I've mentioned before, my wife, one of the many things I love about her is she wrote her master's thesis on The Gunslinger by Stephen King, which of course is the first book in the Dark Tower series, which is one of my favorite fantasy series. I don't know if I'd put it number one, but it's up there. She reached out to the person that wrote the official compendium, and Stephen King has talked about, in fact, I think it's a blurb on the compendium of itself, that thank God this fellow, whose name I can't remember, sorry, compendium fellow, but it's the Dark Tower compendium. Stephen King said, how useful for you to have put this together for me, because now I'm using it to write the additional books. And she reached out to him and had a response within 24 hours. So he's quoted heavily within the master's thesis. I don't know. I don't know that has any relevance to what we're talking about, other than isn't world building fun? Isn't it neat to have a nice big compendium?
No, it is absolutely fantastic, you know, and also, you know, like as I'm learning too, as a freelancer, like on certain books that I work on, especially if I'm doing a developmental edit instead of an editorial assessment, or if I'm doing a copy edit, it's really helpful for me to have, at the very least, like a few pages, you know, identifying like, you know, who the main characters are, so I know what the proper spellings of their names are, for instance, like what their relationships are with various different people in the world, who the king or queen, if there's a kingdom, you know, or the ruling class, like whoever those important figures are, with the names of the different, like, you know, towns that the characters are visiting, and like different qualities about those towns, the names of like the countries and continents, you know, so on and so forth. If there's any like, you know, weird quirky spellings in the book that I should be aware of, like those are actually things that I have started asking authors for, you know, because if I'm not involved with the book from like the very first like manuscript assessment, I'm coming in kind of partway through to do like a line edit or a proofread or something like that. I need to know that what those things are, so I can make sure that they're consistent throughout the manuscript.